There is a moment in a woman's life that almost no one talks about. It is quiet, it is invisible, and most people don't notice it when it happens. But everything changes after that moment. It is the moment she stops begging. Not begging loudly, not begging with words, but begging for attention, begging for understanding, begging to be valued, begging to be chosen. And the day she stops doing that, something powerful happens. She becomes unbreakable. Let me tell you a story. I once knew a woman who used to over-explain everything she felt. If someone ignored her message, she would send another text trying to clarify. If someone hurt her, she would explain again and again why it hurt, hoping they would finally understand. If someone pulled away, she would try harder. More kindness, more effort, more patience. She believed that if she just showed enough love, people would eventually treat her right, but they didn't. And the more she tried to prove her worth, the less people valued it. One day, something inside her changed, not because someone apologized, not because someone finally understood, but because she became tired. Tired of convincing people to care, tired of explaining why she deserved basic respect, tired of shrinking herself just to keep people comfortable. And slowly, she stopped begging. She stopped over-texting. She stopped over-explaining. She stopped chasing conversations that clearly didn't want to happen. She didn't become rude. She didn't become cold. She simply became calm, and that calmness made her powerful. Many people think strength is loud. They think strength is arguing back, proving a point, fighting to be heard. But real emotional strength is quieter than that. Real strength is when you realize, I don't have to convince anyone to see my value. Because the truth is, the moment you start begging for appreciation, people unconsciously begin to treat your value as negotiable. Not always intentionally, not always maliciously. But human nature is simple. People respect what looks scarce, not what looks desperate. And when someone feels you're afraid to lose them, they sometimes stop being afraid to lose you. That is why the moment she stopped begging, everything shifted. Another story. A woman once told me something I never forgot. She said, I used to think being loving meant always staying, always fixing, always trying. But I realized I was the only one doing the trying. For years, she stayed in friendships where she was always the one checking in. Always the one apologizing first. Always the one adjusting her feelings so others wouldn't feel uncomfortable. And one day, she asked herself a simple question. If I stopped reaching out, who would still be here? The answer hurt, but it also freed her. Because from that day forward, she made a decision. I will still be kind, but I will no longer chase people who can walk beside me on their own. And slowly, something incredible happened. The wrong people faded. The right people stepped closer. And most importantly, her self-respect returned. When a woman stops begging, she does not become heartless. She simply begins to understand something most people learn too late. Attention given freely is love. Attention forced is negotiation, and love should never feel like negotiation. She begins to speak less, but mean more. She begins to expect less, but accept only what feels genuine. She begins to walk away sooner, not because she doesn't care, but because she finally cares about herself too. That is the transformation, not anger, not revenge. Clarity. Let's talk about something many people misunderstand. People often say, why did she suddenly change? But the truth is, she didn't change suddenly. She tried for a long time before she became silent. She explained many times before she stopped explaining. She forgave many times before she finally stepped back. Silence is rarely the beginning. It is usually the end of repeated disappointment. And when she reaches that point, something inside her becomes very steady. She no longer reacts to every small emotional wave. She no longer panics when someone pulls away. She no longer measures her worth by how quickly someone replies, because she finally understands. My value does not decrease just because someone fails to recognize it. That realization alone can change an entire life. There is another quiet truth most people avoid. Begging does not always look obvious. Sometimes begging looks like constantly trying to prove you are easy to love, laughing when something actually hurt you, accepting behavior you know you deserve better than just to avoid being abandoned. But the moment she stops doing that, her posture changes, her voice changes, her presence changes. Not because she is trying to impress anyone, but because self-respect has a very specific energy. It makes people feel that losing you would actually mean losing something real. And people naturally treat differently what they feel they can actually lose. I remember another example. A woman once told me, I stopped writing long emotional paragraphs to people who clearly didn't read them. I now speak once, clearly, and then I watch actions. That one change brought her more peace than years of trying to fix relationships. Because she finally understood something powerful. People reveal their priorities through consistency, not promises. And once she accepted that, she stopped chasing potential and started respecting reality. That is when she became emotionally unbreakable, not because nothing hurt her anymore, but because she stopped staying where she was repeatedly hurt. Here is the lesson many people need to hear. Strength is not pretending you don't care. Strength is caring, but refusing to beg. Strength is loving deeply, but walking away when love is one-sided. Strength is giving your presence fully, but never offering it where it is constantly taken for granted. The woman who learns this does not become difficult. She becomes peaceful, because she is no longer fighting to be chosen. She chooses herself first. And from that place, every relationship becomes healthier. And something interesting always happens when she reaches that stage. Some people who ignored her before suddenly notice her distance. Some people who took her kindness lightly suddenly try to reconnect. But by that time, she is different. Not bitter, not angry, just aware. Aware that attention given only after withdrawal is not always appreciation. Sometimes it is simply the fear of losing convenience. And she begins to choose connections that value her presence, even when she is not withdrawing it. So, if you're listening to this today, remember this. The goal is not to stop being loving. The goal is not to become emotionally cold. The goal is to stop begging for what should be given freely. Respect, honesty, consistency, and care. Because the moment you stop negotiating your worth, you stop feeling powerless in relationships. And that is the moment everything changes. That is the moment your peace becomes stronger than your fear of losing people. And that is the moment, quietly, invisibly, you become unbreakable. If this message spoke to you, take a moment today and ask yourself one simple question. Where in my life am I still begging for what I should be receiving naturally? And once you see the answer, you will know exactly where your strength needs to begin. Because the day you stop begging is often the day your real confidence finally starts. If this message helped you reflect, subscribe to the channel for more timeless Stoic wisdom that strengthens your mind, your emotions, and your life.